Greetings builders and welcome back to the part 2 of our top 12 Crucible builds. If you missed part 1, don't worry, you can find its link together with the PoE and complete guide for all those builds in the video description. In 9th place we have the super cool Nightblade Flicker Strike Raider with the Ranger class.
This is the kind of build where you can have it all. It easily achieves over 10 million DPS, it's super tanky, and as you can see on the gameplay, ultra fast. To list the pros of this build, I'll have to pretty much repeat what I just said. This is one of the most well balanced builds I've ever played. It has super speed, damage and survivability. It also has a satisfying gameplay with explosions, and let's face it, Flicker Strike is just super cool. Now to list the cons, I'd start saying that this build isn't cheap. You need some mandatory, unique and rare items that will exceed the price of one Divine Orb. Another issue is that you have little control over your character. This might be a problem on bosses like Queen Atziri and the Shaper, where you need to know which clone to attack and mind your position. Getting to the budget, this build is expensive and not a starter. You need at least 6 Divine Orbs to put it all together. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. You need 3 mandatory unique items for this build. The first is the Fahus Fur body armor, which guarantees that you always have your full frenzy charges up. Next, we also need a Yoke of Suffering amulet that causes all of our elemental damage to be able to shock enemies, causing them to take even more damage from every source. Finally, we need the Perseverance belt that turns tankiness into damage. It does that, granting 1% increased damage for every 200 of the lowest between armor and evasion. Good thing that this build counts with over 30,000 of each. For clear speed, this build is surely a 10 out of 10, and I didn't even need to tell you that. Check out this gameplay, this is some serious anime swordsman stuff. The boss damage is also great, especially when you can use your Berserker skill. As you can see, it kills Guardians in less than 2 seconds, but I'll only give it 9 out of 10 because this damage is reduced on pinnacle bosses when it's harder to stack our rage. For the survivability, I will also give it 9 out of 10. This build has almost 200,000 effective HP because of high armor, high evasion, 100% spell suppression, over 30% chance to block, and high chance to avoid elemental ailments. I just took one point out because it has low life regeneration, making it vulnerable to poison.
Now in place number 8 we have the classic and loved by many Rytle's Fire Juggernaut with the Marauder class.
Here you can use all the tankiness and life regeneration from the Juggernaut to easily sustain the Rytle's Fire damage and just walk your way through the endgame. To list the pros of this build, I'll have to start with how comfortable and smooth this gameplay is. As soon as you get this build sustaining Rytle's Fire, you start clearing maps without even noticing. This character is also super tanky and it will be hard to die even if you try to. Now to list the cons, I'll start saying that the boss damage isn't great, but don't worry, you kill map bosses easily even on a low budget, but Guardians and Pinnacle bosses will take longer than usual if you don't invest a few Divine Orbs. Another issue is that the leveling is a little bit complicated since we use a spell as a Marauder, but if you follow closely the steps on the leveling section from the complete guides, you won't have a problem. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 105 chaos, but if you follow the crafting tips on the complete guide, this can get a lot cheaper. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines, mostly on your survivability. You need 2 mandatory unique items for this build. The first are the Legacy of Fury boots. They scorch nearby enemies and cause them to explode for an amazing clear speed. Those boots might be a little bit expensive during the first days of a new league, but don't worry, you'll be fine playing without them until the price drops. The other mandatory unique is the Immortal Flash belt. This one grants a huge amount of life regeneration and even a great armor buff. For clear speed, I'll give this build 10 out of 10. As mentioned before, as soon as this build is complete, you just walk and watch every enemy burn only because of your presence. This means not stopping for casting and saving a lot of time while farming. The boss damage on the other hand is not that great. I would give it just 7 out of 10 because it will need investment to do a decent DPS on pinnacle bosses and guardians. But don't worry, this build still kills map bosses easily on a low budget. For the survivability, this build surely has 10 out of 10. As you can see on the PoB, this build gets over 100,000 armor, 2,000 life regeneration per second, over 87% of all elemental resistance, and even over 50% chance to block spell damage. Look at the effective HP, it goes beyond 200,000. Even if you try to die, it wouldn't be easy.
Finally, in 7th place we have this incredibly fun and powerful build, the Cast on Critical Tornado Shot Deadeye with the Ranger class.
This build combines all the power of a cast on critical build with the safety of a ranged attack. It has an amazing clear speed and can deal big damage to bosses. To list the pros of this build, I would start with this amazing clear speed that you are seeing. Look how satisfying it is to cast so many ice spears from our tornado shot projectiles. I'm sure that you will love clearing maps with this build. This character is awesome with bosses as well. It deals a lot of single target damage even from a great distance. Now, to list the cons, I will start saying that this build isn't for everyone. You need a lot of currency to put it together. Another issue is that it isn't easy to build because it needs many specific rare items. As for budget, this build will need at least 12 Divine Orbs to put it together. As I said, it's an expensive one. You need 3 mandatory unique items for this build. The first one is the Aseneth's Mark Helmet that triggers socket skills when you attack. This grants even more ice spears. We also need the Maloney's Mechanism. This one is the only quiver that has sockets. We're going to use those extra sockets to debuff bosses for a lot more damage. Finally, we also need 2 Intuitive Leap unique jewels to save many points in our passive tree. For clear speed, this one is surely a 10 out of 10. Clearing with this build is not only fast but also extremely satisfying. The boss damage also deserves 10 out of 10. You end up casting so many ice spears and all of them can hit the target, causing an incredible shotgun effect. For the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build can do everything from a safe distance, it freezes enemies, it has a huge amount of evasion, armor and spell suppression. It will be hard to die if you always mind your position on Guardians and Pinnacle bosses.
And that's it for today, guys. Stay tuned for part 3 next Saturday, and please don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building.